Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is now the 13th of August. Where have I heard that phrase before? Actually, there was a thing I watched years ago. It was like a Irish ghost documentary from like 1979. Good morning, Alex. And I remember I watched it was a 1979 Irish ghost documentaries, Ireland, Land of Celtic Ghosts. That's what it's called. And it was, and I remember, the scenery in it, good morning, Sam. The scenery in it was absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. But the actual content, like whoever wrote and narrated this thing, it was just, the writing was ridiculous about, the dark pagan times where they were all committing human sacrifice and the light of when St. Patrick came in, and I'm just like, oh dear. So anyway, it's from 1979 and it was Ireland. So, but anyway, whenever I say it's now the, actually he probably was saying the 4th of August now that I'm remembering it. For some reason I'm thinking of it as, I'm saying it's now the 13th of August. But there was one seance in this house that was, what was his name? Major Black was his name. And I know he had worked with Sybil Leek, who had been she was like a witch and she was a medium, who had, and because he had these hauntings in his house, and he had a megalithic tomb in his backyard, and I guess his son and their friends were doing a seance with the Ouija board back there, and and he was very nervous about it. So this, of course, being the 70s, they had like walkie-talkies between the place, and then something happened, like literally whatever they called up, they got the name Odin on the Ouija board, and then somebody got like bludgeoned in the head, and they, had to call a doctor and everything. So yeah, it was a very weird thing. But I just remember the recording of it because he played the good old cassette tape of what he had recorded that had happened in this tomb area. And literally he starts by saying it is now the 4th of August. And it's just the way he said it and the way I just said it. I was like, I said it's now the 13th of August. I was like, I don't know why that just suddenly reminded me of that. Anyway, that is completely not relevant to anything, but it's just the thing that popped into my mind. So I think I've said this, and I'll just kind of say it for the folks who come on here regularly, is that, yeah, today's the 13th. So I think as of next, well, why don't we just, actually the 19th is a rather interesting day, but let's just say as of the 19th, I'm going to move these to 7 o'clock. I think I had said the 18th, and then I thought, no, let's do the 19th. And that way, because now the mornings are getting, they're getting lighter later. So it's going to be probably like almost 6:15 when the light comes in. So yeah, so like I said, right now it is light enough out. But and then once we get into winter, again, I might have to move it even to like 8 o'clock or at least 7:45 because the sun's not going to come up until about 7:30. So yeah, at least that's the way it is here in the Northeast. I seem to remember when I was living in the UK that it would. When I was there in the winter time, that the sun would go down. It actually went down earlier than here and came up later. Like it was closer to 8:30 in the morning that it actually came up. Yes. It was, I think I'm actually going to see both of you on Saturday, actually, because I think you're both in that class that I'm doing Saturday. Yeah, reminder to people, I am doing the Chiron class on Saturday. I think I've got a few people registered now, but I know there were some people who were saying, ooh, yeah, I really want to take that. And so just a reminder, yay, I'm going to see both of you. That'll be great. So that'll be, yeah. So I right now, and there's another registrant besides you guys. And I know that there's I've heard from at least maybe 2, maybe 3 other people who said they wanted to register. I started working on the material for that yesterday. So I just have to kind of put my presentation together. And I also, I always like to, do like handouts, cheat sheets, things like that. But it'll be interesting because we're going to explore I'm going to talk about Chiron across all 12 signs, but I'm also going to talk about, we're going to talk about everybody who's in the class, their individual Chiron, and kind of what that means, and while again, there's a difference of opinion as to whether or not Chiron wounds can be healed, because the idea of Chiron as the wounded healer, okay, he wasn't able to heal himself. This is the wound that can't be healed. But the question is, but again, I feel like not only with Chiron retrograde, but we have Pluto moving back into Capricorn. again in September. And just certain things that are happening that they're kind of allowing us to kind of maybe return. A lot of people are kind of focusing on origins. People who do Rouhani, it's kind of like people are finding that they're able to, whatever is blocking the heart, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's this thing that happened like when I was 9, and that's what's blocking the heart, or whatever. Like there's something that comes up, and the thing about it for I think a lot of people is sometimes it's but again, I feel like people who do Rouhani are people like if they feel like they need to do it, it's like no, now it's the time for you to do it. Some people, they're feeling like, ooh, I don't know if I'm quite ready for that. In which case, that's perfectly understandable. I'm not, I've never been one to tell people, oh, but it would be good for you. You really should have it, because it's just not everybody's ready to face certain issues that they've had in their lives. But it does tend to bring the core issue like front and center and say like, hey, this is the thing that's going on here. Although, as I mentioned with the violet flame, it works backwards. So it may start with the most recent stuff and then work its way back. I know if somebody's done a lot of work already, sometimes it will immediately jump to the older thing. So, and yeah, there's just been some interesting results across the board, because I had to think about how many Rouhani clients I have now. I want to say, let's see, I probably have almost 15. And that's really, I mean, given that I was attuned to Rouhani in the end of June, and this is only like the middle of August, it's kind of, that's like a lot of people. I don't even know if I've had like that many continuous Reiki clients in my life. And I've been, other than when I worked in the hospital, and of course I had Reiki clients every night, but they weren't like people who, booked with me and stuff like that. Oh, wow. Yeah. A lot of people are booking Rouhani. It seems to be, it's a tool that I think a lot of people are finding like, oh yeah, I think that's what I need right now. And so that's all part of this whole process of healing. Now, what I was going to talk about today was interesting, because I woke up and I know I was talking about the angelic stuff yesterday, and I know that there's an interest in me talking a bit more about that. And I did get some more, I mean, the messages have been almost continuous, and basically what I've come to kind of understand about whatever's going on with that is it's like, when it comes to, because, okay, I did another Azrael, I think I mentioned I did another Azrael channeling, and it was a private one. But the private one was divided into 2 parts. I actually have one part that is, it was where I was speaking, where Azrael was saying what he was going to say through me. And then it was like the neighbors, it was a Sunday, and it was like, normally, okay, I know the neighbor has a contractor who comes in to mow her lawn and to do all that stuff, and they ride around and they use the weed trimmers and all that. But they're usually there on Monday, and they were there on Sunday, and all of a sudden it was just really loud next to my house. So I was really annoyed. So I was like, because I was in this state, and I'm like, I can't. And the thing is, when you're recording it, even if I could mentally get past it, people listening to the recording, you can't hear things over this. Even with the windows closed, it's just very, very loud. So I turned the recording off, and I waited till I heard quiet, and then I turned it back on again, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to lay here, and I'm going to try to put myself back in that state, because I look at myself, I was very, very restless, because I was irritated with the fact that it's like, why are you here on a Sunday morning doing this, But that was the thing I was supposed to do yesterday morning, was go out, and I didn't. So I'm going to end up doing that today. My sister's meeting me for a walk. It's a really beautiful day. We usually walk on Tuesdays. But anyway, so with the angelic stuff, it was, I was kind of, okay, so I had, when I did the second recording, a lot of times I will ask Azrael if he can, I'm very Taurian, and I like to have some kind of a sign that I'm not like making all this crap up in my head. You know what I mean? Like even though I've had plenty of signs, I'm just, I don't know, I'm always just kind of like, you always kind of want kind of a sign that you're not making it up. And so I did the recording, and it didn't feel like, I kind of, I always have kind of a feeling when he's around, but I was also so restless. I'm like, I don't know if I got anything on that. It was an additional 22-minute recording. And so I was just like, okay, when I was done, I just turned it off. And so I went back and I checked it, and I said, well, is there going to be anything on that recording? Is there going to be anything? And he said, yeah, I'm on the recording. And he said another word. It's a word that's spelled like VMD, and it means call or called. But that was the word he could get out. And then it's always like I can hear him like it's like he's breathing or trying to breathe. And what he said to me is like, yeah, like he said, to come to the frequency where this is. It's not that this means that it's bad. It's just heavier. It's just the terrestrial energy is heavier. It's weighted down by a lot of stuff. So he said it's just hard for him to talk and hard for him to kind of do that, like breathe, and it's like trying to talk through something, which is also why Alex, you might have been the one who noted this. Like sometimes I get the coughing while he's trying to talk because it's almost like he's trying to come through this certain. But it's much easier for him to talk through me. As long as I'm kind of, it's like I'm kind of getting tuned into that frequency. It's like the radio station thing, I'm getting tuned into that frequency. And now it's just easier and easier to hear his voice all the time. And yesterday he was talking a lot to me about stuff. And some of it's stuff that is, well, it's not really something, I think it's just something that's more meant for me and not necessarily to be shared with regard to my whole process. So, but he does... he did kind of indicate to me that, like what we were saying yesterday about Metatron and about that. The reason a lot of this is coming up right now has to do with the T-square that's happening. And okay, I learned a little bit more about the T-square. I finally went to my one of my go-to astrologers, who is Steve Judd, because I knew it was happening. I knew it wasn't happening in my sign, but he did mention. So I ended up watching his August video, and he was saying that. The T-square, well, first of all, the Pluto in Capricorn, he says, oh, that's not going to affect anybody. Just people who are born on the last day or the first day of, like, Aries, Taurus. I'm like, that's me. Come on, It's not going to affect anybody. It's going to affect me. But apparently, the effect is not going to be, it's just going to be another chance to revisit and clean up old stuff, really, is what it's going to be. Yeah, not anybody. It's not really going to affect anybody. Just people born on those days. I'm like, how many people I know who were born on my birthday? So it's just kind of funny. But I ended up. So when he talked about the T-square and what it is basically you have a Mars-Uranus conjunction, which is usually a very, very good thing. Okay, because it can. Not Mars-Uranus, Mars-Jupiter. Get my planets mixed up. It's a Mars-Jupiter conjunction. So normally this gives us the drive to succeed. It allows us to open doors and open horizons. And it's I think it's at about 17 degrees. I think, is that where it is? I can't remember. But so you have that, and it's going to be in the mutable signs. Okay, and the mutable signs are. It's what they call a grand cross, and it's going to be in Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And last time I talked about it, I knew I was missing a sign. It was, Sagittarius and Pisces. They're mutable because they're the ones that are at the end of a season. Gemini's at the end of spring. You have Virgo that's at the end of summer, and then you have Sagittarius at the end of autumn, and then Pisces at the end of winter. So they are the mutable signs. And they are... So this grand cross, it literally makes this kind of cross in the chart, and so it's going to be Mars Jupiter conjunct, but it's going to be in opposition to Saturn, and Jupiter is going to be in opposition to Saturn for some time now. It's going to make a square with it, and and he said it's going to be like there's going to be like 3 different periods over like the next 10 months or so. Where that's going to happen. It's going to go into 2025. And at some point, when we go into that space, it's going to be like when Saturn, I think this last square he was saying is going to be when Saturn moves into Aries, and I think Jupiter is going to be in Cancer at that point. That's going to be the last one for a while anyway. But we've got several of them coming up. So, the opposition is one thing. But it's making this grand cross, and it's the moon opposite Uranus is the other piece of it. Okay. Now, I know the moon today is in Scorpio, and I think the moon is going to be in Aquarius, actually, on the day of that. On the day of the full moon. And I keep saying it's the 17th, and it's actually the 19th. I'm not sure why I'm thinking that the full moon is the 17th, or where that... Maybe it was something I saw on a calendar, and I thought that that's what it was. But anyway, it is the 19th that there's the full moon. And so this Grand Cross is, I mean, again, it's going to mainly affect the mutable signs. So if you happen to be one of those signs, then it could affect you, and particularly if you have any planets at 17 degrees of that. Now, it's interesting. I have Mars at 15 degrees of Gemini in my chart, and it's conjunct Venus natally, and that's in the 12th house. And so for me, I think that a lot of this activity that's being stirred up right now is because, yeah, it's like, okay, that it's almost like there's this confrontation. Because remember I said this was going to be kind of a confrontation. Part of the reason all this is going on for me is it has something to do with whatever my 12th house block is. And as I mentioned a couple days ago, my 12th house block is something that is, whatever it is, like from the first time I ever got a chart done, which was in the year 2000, was the woman who did it. And the woman who did it, like, you know, she was a clinical psychologist, but she was also somebody who was just very, very intuitive. And I remember her saying on the tape because she recorded it on cassette tape for me. And she said, I swear to you, she says, I never have this much trouble trying to figure something out in a chart, but it's almost like they won't let me see what this is. Like, she's like, it's something big in your 12th. They're not letting me see what it is. So whatever that big thing is in the 12th house, it's like exploding right now. And it's connected to like some of this work that I'm doing. My Mercury, what is my 10th house is Pisces. Okay. And then my Virgo house is actually the 4th house, which is my home and family sector. So I'm like, great, I'm going to be watching. There's something here. And what's the other part of that cross? Sagittarius. Sagittarius is my 6th house. Okay, so it's, and there is, again, if we're doing it where we allow the signs to cross over, yeah, I mean, my 10th house is like technically Pisces Aries. It's, you know, we're not just doing it, if we're not just doing it like, you know, single sign, single house kind of a thing. But that's where they're located in any case. And so I'm like, okay, it kind of, and that's actually for anybody who's looking at their own chart. I mean, kind of seeing where those positions are, can give you an idea of what kind of impact this might have. Now, again, it may have more or less of an impact depending on whether or not you have planets there and whether or not they are at 17 degrees of, you know, this, whether you have planets at 17 degrees in those signs. Like, that seems to be part of the deciding factor as to how much of an effect it's going to have on you. But that seems to be the reason that it was like all of a sudden everything opened up and I started to get all of this information about this stuff. And I mean, I'm still not going to pretend that I fully know what it all means. But it's something that I'm working on. But I keep seeing things about it. Like, I don't know. But the fact that they keep telling me, okay, like something's coming, like they were saying, but it's really more the 19th. It's the full moon. They're like, okay, something, you know, just gotta be strong for it. And I'm like, okay. You know, that, you know, even though I'm told not to be nervous about it, I'm like, that does make me very nervous. Especially if it's something that has been hidden in my chart forever because, no, we really don't want you to see this. Now I'm like, okay, now you want me to see this. But I guess to the point of what was being said about Metatron and so forth, that I got a message this morning about the angels of the highest circle. Basically, what we said was there's angels of the highest emanation or the highest circle are the ones who are speaking truth and the ones you can trust. And he said basically the ones south of that are the ones, he said, that you can't trust because they are still in sympathy with that view that's being promoted. And that's the one that's closest to the terrestrial plane. Okay, that's the one that is the closest. And on that terrestrial plane, so that's where, so even people who are connecting in with angelic messages and so forth, the ones that are the closest may not be giving true information to people, is what they're saying, what he said. He says you have to be very careful of that. And I don't know, whatever is happening in the celestial realm is going to be kind of like a, you know, it's going to be like a Ma Durga moment or something. Like, you know, things are going to get kind of cleared out. And so I kind of said, well, what does that mean then? I mean, it's not like, I mean, if you're saying that the idea of a fall is not real, he says, no, we're not talking about a fall. But he said it did have a lot to do with, because again, what's happening in the terrestrial realm seems to be mirroring, well, really, what's in the celestial realm is mirroring, you know, it's in that's sort of the macrocosm of the microcosm. So any kind of imbalance there affects the narrative here, is pretty much what he has said. And this is why we have this narrative of, we're all split, we all hate each other, we're all afraid of each other, and all this kind of stuff. And so what he said to me was that, no, he says this narrative kind of has to be cleared out, and that this tension, the kind of Grand Cross tension that's created is actually energetically the right opportunity to kind of clear that out. And so, but he said there's angelic beings, he says, that you could have sympathy for, like where you could say, oh well, either they made a mistake, or I understand, or maybe I understand why they're afraid, or why they want to continue to. He says, he says, you don't want to have empathy for that point of view. He says you just can't, because it's not, and it seems to have a lot to do with this movement into the New Age. I know there's been talk for years, like back since the 60s, hey, it's the dawning of the age of Aquarius and all this stuff. But there does seem to be a dawning of some kind of, like, legitimately a dawning of a new age. I mean, people have talked about it for ages, like, hey, maybe this is the start, and hey, maybe that's the start, and maybe it's this, and maybe it's that. Well, whether it has to do with the age of Aquarius or not, and it might, it's just like, whatever it is, there's like an old, and I've talked about this a lot here, like people who, when they're confronted with the new, they're like, it's just safer to go back to the old. And he's like saying it's kind of almost the same thing there. It's like, it's not safer to go back to the old. Like, it's time to move ahead. Staying with the old means staying in a realm of thinking here that's going to drive people towards fear and towards authoritarianism and towards needing a strong man to, watch over them, kind of a thing. And he said that's not the energy. The other thing I didn't mention on this live stream, I did talk a little bit about it on Katonia yesterday, because I talked a little bit about this with respect to the Lilith aspect. So you can watch my live stream over there if you want to. Because Lilith came up. He kept referring to Lilith's harvest. And so I talked a little bit about that. But basically what he had said was that when it came to Jesus, he was just kind of like, he's like, basically in angelic speak, which is not like ours, basically the idea is that Jesus is kind of thrown under the bus. He said because Jesus actually has a message that is... it kind of, again, if you go back to Gnosticism, Christ is supposed to be like the Sophia or the wisdom who's come back to try to help humanity, well, we use the phrase raise itself up, but get past the narrative that of that restrictive narrative, okay? And instead, the Jesus narrative was co-opted for that purpose. Because this all has to do with empire and structure and limitation and making everybody think the same way, and you'd better not think outside the box because everybody has to be going the same way, and that's kind of the that thing. And they said, and they've kind of taken the message, because really when you think about it, when we hear a lot now about what we're calling Christo-fascism and things like that, where people are trying to say like hateful things towards immigrants, and I'm like, okay. Very simple thing. If you're going to go to the Bible, it's going to tell you, you welcome the stranger and that you treat your neighbor as yourself. It's easy to, kind of the idea that it's easy to treat people you like well. And even Amma said this, actually. It's easy to treat all your friends well. How do you treat the person who's different from you or who you don't agree with? How do you treat them? All of this stuff is biblical. I mean, I remember learning this stuff growing up, in CCD and all that stuff. And now people talk like, no, we don't like those people. Those people are parasites. Or you hear this kind of talk. That's in fact the reason I stopped talking to my next door neighbor, because at some point, and again, she was just parroting, I think, somebody else she heard, but she was just talking about how COVID came here because of like filthy immigrants or something. And I was just like, okay, enough. I'm done with you. I'm not, I know she's, she's kind of ignorant in a lot of ways, but I was just like, that just was kind of a deal breaker for me. I was like, okay, you know what? Stop, geez, yeah, exactly. I'm like, stop othering people. And she's somebody who claims to be very, very Christian and doesn't understand why people aren't Christian. I'm like, that's it right there. Right, and all of this gets me back to Catholic school, but in a whole new way. Yeah, and it's, right, because it's not that. Actually, one of the things I've often taught in my class about Catholicism, when I was in Catholic school, I graduated in 1990 from Catholic high school, okay? And I'm not going to say which one, but I graduated from Catholic high school, and in 1989, okay, it was my junior year, and it was 88-89 school year, my brother died. And he died, as I mentioned, from AIDS complications. And of course, we all know how maybe we don't. If you were just born then or whatever, basically they treated anybody who had an AIDS patient like, we should burn your house down because you're filthy and diseased. I mean, they had a really poor attitude towards AIDS and AIDS patients. AIDS patients were like, oh, it's God visiting sin on you, and you don't deserve to, you just deserve to die alone. And yeah, it was really, really horrible stuff that went on. And I guess my brother was fortunate in the sense that, my parents did not abandon him in that. My mother, of course, was devastated, and I'm pretty sure its loss of him is had a huge effect on her psyche going forward. But I remember I was in Catholic school. It was in January, because he died in early January. And I remember it was like my sister was late picking me up, so I think I'd called, and she said, "Yeah, Mom's not going to come get you," because at that time I wasn't bused. I had to be picked up from the school, and she says, "I'm going to come get you." She says, "And by the way, Bill died today," and I was like, so I'm just kind of standing there. There's a payphone, I'm going, okay, that's how I learned about it. And she picked me up. And I remember, because this was just before, I guess, what would have been midterm examinations, like end of second marking period, it would have been examinations. And typically speaking, when something like that happens, and not only do you get a certain number of days off for bereavement, and my mother had called to tell them, of course, what had happened. And I don't know, I still feel like they counted it against me in attendance, which was really interesting. And nobody was notified, nobody was told, and it was like, no, you're just going to go on and take your exams like normal. Because there were a couple of teachers who knew what was going on, and only one of them, who was actually a Greek Orthodox priest, who I think actually was gay, came to pay his respects. He was the only one. The rest of them did not, and it was just completely not even acknowledged. And I remember when I started my senior year and I took senior year religion, we had one of the girls in the class, her sister was killed in a car accident over the summer. And that became everybody had drama about it. And that always annoys me, because I'm like, you didn't even know her. You're just, because that's literally making it about you. Oh, there was a loss and I don't know if I can take it. I need to speak to someone. It's like, shut up. I'm sorry, just to be blunt. I'm like, just stop. I just found it appalling. But nobody would talk about mine, and what I was told was, oh, well, you know why we can't talk about yours. So we're not going to pray for him. But, this other one, sure. So anyway, point being, I when I tell my students this story, I'm like, the point being is that I have a lot of reasons to, I have a lot of reasons to hate the Catholic Church, okay? A lot. I think probably, I felt like there was no divine love there. No, none at all. And it was hilarious because, thank you. It's okay. I mean, like I said, this was 1989, a long time ago. And I think I'd already broken with the church at that point anyway, but that just kind of, and my sister, who's Chiron and Pisces, that I think was the break. Well, that and there was one other incident, but that was one of the breaking points for her. She was just because, I remember the funeral too. I was standing next to my dad. And the priest who was doing the funeral, because my mom insisted he have a Catholic funeral, was, well, we all hope he goes to heaven, even though he turned his face away from God. Literally said that at my brother's funeral. And my sister was livid, because I was ready to go up the fucking thing and just strangle him. But that's what goes on. So let's just say I have ample reason to hate the Catholic Church. Okay. Now, that said, after I was initiated into Hindu mantra, into Amma's mantra, I found that I just found myself reading Saint Teresa of Avila and reading some of these writers and finding that when you get into the mystical portion, Joseph Campbell always talks about 4 functions of religion. The highest function being the metaphysical, the next function being the cosmological, the third one being the social, and then the last one being the psychological or the pedagogical, the one that affects, how the religion affects my day-to-day life. The social, of course, how it affects the social order. Cosmological, how is everything made? How did the universe get to be where it is? And then the metaphysical, what's the mystery beyond that, right? So I always felt that taking communion, a lot of people say, oh, it's just some stupid, ritual. No, it actually does something. But I didn't discover it until I'd actually started doing Hindu meditation. And for a time period, I had considered going back to the church just because I was kind of so not in this space. It was like, I would have liked the idea of just a contemplative kind of a life. And that's really the only option for that. But I realized, I was like, no, I got a couple of things was like, oh no, this is absolutely not for you. And, but I did take communion in that time, and I had the same samadhi effect. But I'm like, the average Catholic doesn't have that, because the average Catholic has not, they keep you away from those kinds of experiences, which is a huge irony, because I'm like, if people had more of those experiences, they might, but the thing is, the problem too is because of the way Catholicism is socially, on the social level. See, on the social level, even though they're relatively speaking, there may be other versions of Christianity that are worse. On the social level, they're still piss poor. I mean, they get an F grade from me on the social level. On the metaphysical level, they touch on something that Protestantism does not, because Protestantism is all about the text in the book. They fetishize the text, and this is about this is about connecting to the mystery, like the mystery, the ritual of transubstantiation, the thing that connects you to what they would call Christ, or what they would call that, that to me, that the real peace is there, but they only allow certain people to have that peace. So if you are in a state of sin, you're not allowed to receive it, which I think is shit. But anyway, that's how they, and I said, this is why you have it, Christian Orthodoxy, like the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, they have that element too, because they have the icons, they have that understanding that you're pointing to something that's beyond all of these rules and regulations, but they want to, but they're like, no, that's just for special people who are clergy that they can watch over and control. That's pretty much what it is. If an average pro, oh no, we can't have other people having it unless, and that's why, and I've noticed that the people who have these mystical experiences are so overwrought with fear, like, oh my God, I'm so small and God can destroy me, but it's only through his love. And it's like, it's like, they're so conditioned to that fear response that was being talked about the other day, that they're not able, they're able to kind of go into that ecstasy, but then like the superiors look at them like, well, maybe this is the devil doing this, maybe it's and that's, and I said, and then once you start getting people, then now the mind is split again. It was kind of whole, now it's split again. And it's very, very hard for people raised in that to get past that split. And I'm like, that's where they fall down. And that's why they're going to fail as a religion, because they're not, they have something that legitimately works, that legitimately can open your heart, that legitimately can connect you to something. And their whole goal is to keep the average person away from it, and I've talked about this in other places before. So yeah, so I always tell this to my students, and just to kind of demonstrate to them that there's this metaphysical level of religion, at which I could look at it and say, yes, there is something there. It's not like, oh, it's just a bunch of BS that somebody made up to control people. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's to be something that people, but at the same time, the way in which their institutions come in and want to kind of take control of people in situations, I'm like, that's where you fail. Because that's what Azrael was talking about with Metatron. He says, no, that's a narrative that says you need to be very afraid, and you need us to to take care of it for you. Remember I talked a lot about the rescuer cards? That rescuer mentality, the savior mentality. Oh no, things are terrible. Oh, we're here to save you. We're here to save you from death. We're here to save you from, and when you got someone like Azrael going, what do you mean you're going to save somebody from death? It's just, yeah, because it creates this idea that anybody who doesn't follow this is going to be punished, and that's the problem narrative. It's like, no, that's not really how. It's not that bad things don't happen. It's not that if we do bad things that doesn't have consequences. But it's not this kind of if you read a lot of my research was on kind of the development of ideas like hell and heaven. And I actually do have a class on that. I haven't offered it. I don't know if people want to take it. I can always revive that class if people would like to take it. But that was one that I did. I think I did it. I was working for Metapsychosis Journal at the time, and I think I had offered it. And I had a few people in that class. But yeah, where I was kind of talking about the development of underworld concepts and how they change. That's literally like the basis of Death and the Maiden, how we get from that. But Death and the Maiden only stops at the Roman Empire. It doesn't go into all of the developments, ideas, because really you don't have a fully formed idea of heaven and hell until the 12th century. Really roughly around the time Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, the Inferno, the Paradiso, the Purgatorio, like that was all written around that time. And that's the concept that we have now of what life after death is. That's why we think, when somebody dies, they get their wings. And it's like, not in the sense of becoming angels, but in the sense of, where the idea of the winged soul comes from and all of that. Like, that's all part of that work that I've done. So, and it's far too long, especially now that we're at 7:06, and we want to make sure that we get our reading in for today. But anyway, if that's a class that interests people, I can offer it. I don't know if I'll end up offering it on the other school that I'm starting, but I might just offer it on Transition Life Coaching because people's fear of the underworld is a big thing. Like, I'd better behave a certain way because I don't want to go to hell when I die, kind of thing. And just to kind of finish up that story, I remember I met a girl who was a medium. She was a little out there, but I knew that the stuff that was coming through was like very legit. Because she was walking past places and going, like that, where I knew stuff had gone on, but I knew she didn't. And she, and she was just like, well, wait, who's this person over here? What's this? What are they saying about that? Like, she could pick stuff up really quick. And she said to me at one point, she called me up out of the blue. She goes, "Did your brother die when he was young?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, she was talking about the first guy who died on 9/11. And I forget what his name is. She refers to him as Saint Michael somebody because she said he was I think he was like a gay priest who had gone. He was one of the first ones to run in to try to save the firefighters. She refers to him as Saint because she refers to him in a place that she understands as heaven. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not really quite that conception. But she just said, she goes, "I don't know, because he just came through to tell me that, just want you to know that your brother's in heaven and you don't have to worry." And I don't feel like that was a message for me. I feel like that was more a message for my mom, who is, very Catholic and very scared. So, but again, my understanding is that heaven as such does not exist. It's just kind of like, okay, you move on and, and your soul does, whatever remains of what the memory of you does go to a place that's not some horrible, evil place. So our center card here is conditioning. Okay, we were talking a lot about bravery here, and here's our devil card. We have the sheep, the lion among sheep, okay? And that's interesting because that's a motif that's been coming up at the end of Leo, especially, is the idea that you, remember I was saying, they keep saying, have courage, have courage. So whatever it is that we're facing in this time period, we're being called on to have courage. And not to go back to the past way of doing things, not to follow old conditioning. But what gets in our way is the mind. This is the inner feeling of which we are unaware. Okay? And this is actually the, is this the Page of Swords? I can't forget this is the Page of Swords, because I think the Knight is the one that is fighting. So I feel like this is the Page of Swords, is the mind. It's the way in which we talk ourselves out of things and the way we doubt things. Or we have to dissect everything. And this is what makes us feel like, okay, maybe my mind can't imagine enough of what's new yet, so I need to go back to the things that my mind can play with, because that feels safer, right? And the external feeling of which we're aware is stress. We feel like there's something we need to be doing and that we need to be doing it now. But again, you have the little monkey that's about to pop the balloon that this guy is juggling all of this stuff on. So really, this is all the stuff of the mind. And the balloon is about to pop, okay? Which is why we need to have the courage here in the middle. And again, the popping of the balloon, this is the Seven of Wands. This is the card of stress. So it's almost like we know that there's this thing going on that it's not sustainable. Either we're trying to do too many things. For a lot of people, and I've noticed this with Rahani, is that there's a lot of people who take too much on their shoulders. I feel a lot of people who have like shoulder stuff, and the shoulder areas have to do with self-blame, right? It's the idea that, I didn't do this right. I'm not doing enough. I did this wrong. And it's like saying, that it's almost like a mini tower. It's kind of like, no, that needs to fall down and that needs to kind of fall off your shoulders, because this is not a burden that you should be carrying in this way. Because a lot of times we feel there's that fear, there's that pressure that, I have to be this, or I have to be all things to all people, or I have to, no, I have to maintain this thing. Even if everything in our instinct and our heart tells us, no, we're not to we need to let something go. Because something is coming to an end. We have the completion card here. This is the world card. And it's like the final piece of the puzzle coming into place here is what we see. And so, in other words, it's saying, we're driving ourselves crazy, we're stressing ourselves out, but it's time to step into our lionhood, so to speak, which would also have to do with our sovereignty, because something's done. And of course, the world, because it's a major arcana, it's really done. It's not done in a Ten of Swords kind of sense where we feel like broken and betrayed. And maybe we do about certain things, okay? But it's just saying like whatever work was connected to that past is done. It's over with. You finished, and the world is always about ending with a sense of accomplishment, okay? With feeling like, okay, I finished that. That's good. We're ready for the next thing. And our outcome card is the King of Wands. This is the card of the creator, okay? You see the internal sun here. If you've done Rahani with me, I've talked about the idea of the central sun in the solar plexus. We see this here. And so it's like letting your inner sun shine. And really the inner sun, that goes back to the lion, like having the courage to be who you are. And the creator card indicates creating from source, like creating. Our inspiration always comes from, like, we're part of a bigger web, okay? We're like, if you want to use the ocean wave metaphor, you're part of a spider's web, spider's web where everything is interconnected. We're part of this large network, and when we go back to whatever the source of that is, that's where our inspiration comes in. That's where we kind of radiate our own light, our own energy, our own whatever it is that. Whatever talent it is that we have, whatever is unique to us that we offer to the whole. So the creator is saying, return to source and be inspired from there. Because that's going to be where the truth is. Don't get caught up in but there was this, and then this happened before, and then there was that, no, but I know I should drop one of these 6,000 things, but I really can't, I have to do it all, and I have to do it all now. Return to source, and source will tell you what it is that you actually need to be spending your time and energy on, okay? So that's our reading. I think I'll pull, because we're talking about, we're moving towards a full moon here. I'm going to do a moonology reading. Okay, so let's see what we have for today. Whoop. Oh. Okay, we got two. We got supermoon. Emotions are running high. Yeah, with a Mars-Jupiter conjunction in a T-square, I think emotions most certainly could be running high. And then we also have cardinal moon, actually. Be bold and make the first move. Okay? So I'll tell you what both of these cards mean, and then we'll close out for today. Supermoon is, okay. This card suggests the answer to whatever you're asking is writ large like the silvery full moon, set against the velvety night sky. If you're wondering how successful something is going to be, such as a job or a relationship, the answer is very. To use common parlance, the answer to your question may well be that it's right under your nose. This card is about being larger than life, being special and bursting with energy that you can tune into and work with. You can expect plenty of good things and a positive outcome when this card comes up, but you may find there's a lot of emotion to deal with too. There's also a sense that the opportunities around whatever you're asking about don't come along every day, so take action. And there's cardinal moon kind of pushing us towards the new, because cardinal has to do with the start, with the new. The mutable has to do with what's ending. Cardinal has to do with what's starting. Now's the time to be bold and bossy even. There's your lion, right? Take matters into your own hands. Cardinal signs are powerful and self-starting. They're determined and great at organizing. Drawing this card strongly suggests you're going to need to be all those things to get your ideal resolution or position in the situation you're asking about. This may challenge you on how strongly you want something. If you're worrying about a situation, it's a suggestion to be less passive. Instead, take an assertive stance as you steer events where you want them to go. Speak up for what you want. If you're serious about sorting things out, you may need to take the lead in some way or to step up as a leader. So the thing is, I'm taking charge of my destiny. So basically, I think what it's just saying is, yes, there's a lot of emotions right now, but get the mind de-involved. Don't stress yourself out, and just say, move forward assertively and confidently towards what it is you're trying to do. So that seems to be the message for right now of this and of this time period. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I will be here tomorrow morning, and like I said, we'll switch over next week to the 7 o'clock time frame for this. But I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday. And and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.